What is going on, guys? It's been a minute, and as you'll hear in this episode, I've got a lot of updates of things I've been working on, a recent move, my new hedge fund, and all these exciting projects. But I'm back with an exciting episode today, and we have a few more fun podcasts coming out in the next coming weeks. We have Jim Woolery coming on, who I'm really excited about. He was a Wall Street lawyer that I really looked up to. He worked at Cravath when I was about to come in as a summer associate there. He was in the entire head globally, co-head of JP Morgan's M&A group. And separately, I had someone from Dre Baldwin's team reach out to me. If you don't know who he is, he's a former professional basketball player. So just want to let you know I've had a lot going on in my life, but always want to make room to get back into the podcast episodes. So we have a few exciting ones coming out over the next few weeks. And more importantly, right now, I have an episode for you with Erik Berglund. And Erik, this is actually me going on Erik's show called I Have Some Questions. And Erik's not only a great podcast host of a new podcast that he recently launched and had me on for one of his sort of pre-launch episodes, but he's actually a former client of mine, a husband, a father, a great guy, great coach, great dad. And we had a really interesting conversation. Talked about the difference between success and satisfaction and how real fulfillment comes from purpose, not just stacking wins, chasing approval, or making money. But we absolutely talked about how to be more successful, build your career, build your income, whatever that looks like for you. I shared more about my story of from working on Wall Street to shifting over to coaching, becoming a business owner, and then ultimately more information about my hedge fund, which many of you don't know a lot about. So we talk about mindset, leadership, emotional discipline, what it really takes to scale something meaningful. And if you've ever asked yourself, is this it? Or, hey, I achieved everything on paper that I wanted to, but I'm still not feeling fully fulfilled either in my marriage, personal life, dating, whatever that looks like, I think you're going to want to hear this episode. So without further ado, let's get into it.
I have some questions. How does that work? Can you elaborate? Tell me more. How do you even think about that? Where do you start? Hold on, I'm curious. You got my attention. I'm Erik Berglund, and this is I Have Some Questions. Welcome to Lead with Questions. I'm your host, Erik Berglund, and with me today is successful coach, podcaster, and hedge fund owner, Brendan Burns. Full disclosure, Brendan literally was the coach that convinced me to turn language of leadership into my business. He was the guy who I invested in for over a year to help me develop the systems and processes and offers that have ultimately become the programs that I run today. And there's absolutely zero chance that I would be sitting here with a podcast, YouTube channel, and successful business if I hadn't have spent that time with Brendan. So it gives me a ton of joy to be able to have Brendan on here after the impact he's had in my life. And thanks for coming on, man. Maybe you could take a second and tell the audience a little bit about your background and who you are and what you do, and we'll pick it up from there.
Absolutely. Thank you for the introduction, Erik, and I appreciate the opportunity to have coached you and now be here today. My background is I'm actually from New York originally, went to Cornell, thought I was going to go into finance, wound up doing so. The stock market crashed in 2008, so I went to grad school at Cornell also, got a law degree. I call myself a recovering lawyer. Both my parents are lawyers as well, and got an MBA as well. Worked in finance for about 4 years total, first as an investment banker, and then went into a hedge fund, which I really enjoyed. But during my time at the fund, I kind of got rocked in a personal relationship, felt like I wasn't into my whole true calling and all these things. And I got a therapist, I got a coach, and I started to fall in love with the opportunity to coach other people as I was going on my own journey. So in 2016, I moved away from Steamboat Capital, that was the hedge fund I was at, to do coaching full time. When COVID hit in 2020, moved out to California, first to Newport Beach, and then landed ultimately in San Diego. Although my wife and I just closed yesterday on a house in Orange County, so I'm going back up to OC. And yeah, along the way, I've really enjoyed a lot of different types of coaching, but kind of always found myself helping entrepreneurs, coaches, online business owners grow and scale, which is where we connected. And then after doing that specifically for a number of more years, the capital I was making from my own business plus some family capital was swirling around. And we said, hey, why don't we just set up a hedge fund? This is what I used to do professionally anyway, save people on fees, try to beat the market. And that's been kind of the second business that's been kind of our own personal family capital. Plus, we've started to take some outside investors, and that's what I focus on today, in addition to the coaching, obviously.
Now, are you still doing the podcast as well?
The podcast has definitely slowed down for the purposes of trying to navigate everything. Can obviously be challenging. Um, I'm probably going to put this on my own show if that's cool with you. I know we haven't discussed that yet, but we haven't been actively recording episodes bi-weekly like we used to. It was a great opportunity, but ultimately I felt more called to really lean into my businesses of coaching and hedge fund, and opportunistically record and post interviews like this when they happen.
Yeah, makes sense. Well, again, it's impressive what you've accomplished. Go back in time a little bit. I'm interested in that transition that you made from finance into coaching, because it parallels my story a little bit in the sense that, I think of myself as a recovering sales leader. Like I had this one career track. I had a specific problem. I sought coaching and counseling and guidance on it, fell in love with that skill along the way, and it kind of hijacked me away from that career path, fairly parallel to what it sounds like you went through. But if you think back to that transition from finance to coaching, like, what questions really kept you up at night the most? What were the things you were thinking about then and wondering about at that time, if you can go back to it? And how did you ultimately find the answers to make that next step?
Yeah, in 2012, I started working at Lazard doing investment banking. And by early 2013, there was some chaos happening in my life between relationships, family. I wasn't able to navigate the emotions and challenges, requirements that happened in being an investment banker. I had all the intellectual capital and skills to do that job, but I had no emotional manageability or leadership capacity to do that job effectively. And so that's when I started meeting with different therapists and coaches just purely for my own personal survival, growth, and development. And then transitioned in 2013 into the hedge fund that I was working at. And I very specifically chose that fund. It was very small. Nobody knew what it was, but the founder was both a really nice guy, and I knew that culturally I could sort of survive there as I was working on my personal stuff, versus going to a mega hedge fund or a private equity firm with like a similarly challenging or toxic culture type environment. Yeah. Plus, it was this great entrepreneurial experience because it was just me and him. He gave me a certain amount of equity in the hedge fund, and I was the number 2 guy at a hedge fund at 25 or 26 years old. Wow. And we were able to raise several $100 million of capital and put up really good investment returns. And so to be in that very entrepreneurial environment was really great for me, because I think my grandfather, both my parents, a lot of people in the community I grew up in were lawyers, doctors, and those types of professions. And when I was in law school, I read Tim Ferriss's 4-Hour Workweek. Oh, yeah. And I had this
back too.
Yeah, I had this vision of being able to travel and be my own boss and not have to report to anyone and be able to do it from a laptop anywhere. And so after I was at Steamboat, the hedge fund, I started to think I'm either going to do my own fund or I'm going to do something else like coaching. But I want to be my own boss. I don't even want to have to go into an office. This is pre-COVID when very few people worked remotely. And so I wanted something different. And so the things that were keeping me up at night were, what am I going to start? When am I going to start it? Will this work? How much cash do I need to have saved up? And then the questions I should have been keeping me up at night that weren't, that ultimately is where coaching came in for me around the business specifically, was like how to get leads, how to close, how to sell, how to lead, how to be a business owner, how to navigate the ups and downs of lumpiness and cash and revenue versus a steady commission sheet or paycheck. So that was kind of my story. And then ultimately, it's 2016. I'm at Steamboat. Everything's great with the fund, but it was very clear to the founder and myself that it didn't make sense for me to be there anymore. And so I had been doing so much, receiving so much coaching, and I kind of built my own audience on Instagram and online that I said, let me just try this first. And pretty quickly, I had an online course going with Facebook ads, and I was coaching people, and I was making more money than I was even at the hedge fund. And I was like, oh, this is awesome. And I was traveling a ton. And so I just kind of leaned into that until, like I said, much more recently got back into the hedge fund space.
That's so interesting. I think so many entrepreneurs, especially when they start when they start to get the entrepreneurial itch and hustle in mind, and maybe they build a bit of a side hustle, I think that you start to ask that question you started asking yourself: when's the right time for me to do this? How am I going to? It becomes like a logistical thing. You're really trying to figure out, like, how much money do I need to have? How much time do I need to have? When is that the right time for me? But every single one of us who ends up making the leap wishes we spent more time asking the questions: how the hell am I going to sell this thing? Like, who am I really trying to talk to? What problem am I really trying to solve? Or I find entrepreneurs who have like the product itch. Maybe like you might have come at it more from a commercialization standpoint, but a lot of times someone who's really addicted to their product, they know the industry, they're a widget fixer, they're a mechanic, something along those lines. They think around, oh, this product is going to be so great. But the question that we all should be asking. It sure does seem like, how the heck am I going to sell this? How am I going to scale it? How am I going to grow a business? Do you find that often to be that dynamic with all the coaches you work with?
Well, I can start by telling my own story, which is by 2013, 2014, I was listening to a lot of personal development, Tony Robbins and Jack Canfield specifically. And I just started to really feel and know that business ownership is 100% for me. Not only because of my drive and vision to work remotely, but our country's kind of set up to be a business owner. The tax advantages, the freedom, the lifestyle. Most people who really have a lot of money either start their own companies or are very successful in starting their own businesses. And even locally, this is anecdotal, but living out here in San Diego, when I go to someone's house and they have a pickleball court and a pool and it's a $10 million house, I ask, hey, what does this person do? They always say, oh, they sell T-shirts, or they, it's something witty, but it's really they have scaled their own business and they keep obviously great amount of the profits. So it's really just kind of like fundamentally makes a ton of sense. But as I was going on this journey, starting my own business became much more of a when and a how versus an if problem that I needed to solve. And so between all of those things, one other thing, it was 2015 maybe, whatever year it was, the founder of our hedge fund was getting married, and he went down to Florida for like 6 weeks, call it, to help with the wedding, and it was a destination wedding in Miami and all these things. And I worked from home, and every day I would listen to the earnings calls of the companies on my AirPods or headphones, and I'd walk my dog, and I was outside. I just knew, okay, that's cemented that I'm not an office guy. I'm not a report to someone else type of guy. So that was definitely a big part of my story. But I think for the coaches that I work with, the entrepreneurs that I support, I think a lot of them obviously have not fully leaned into their whole purpose. Because again, when you work for a larger company, you're sort of helping fulfill that company's mission, not your own mission. And you can try to have some better alignment with the things that I love. Maybe that can be in alignment with my day job specifically. But when you own your own business, you control the mission, vision, and values of the entire organization top down. And so you have that freedom to really lean into your purpose 100%. So sometimes it's more of a shocking situation, like a death in the family, a divorce, getting laid off from a company you've been at very long. But typically there's some kind of conscious awakening moment that pushes someone to do that. Or it's something they've been wanting to do forever and the timing just aligns. But that's typically what I see from my clients.
So it sounds like you feel like one of the critical questions they should be asking as they go through that transition or prepping for that transition is why am I doing this? What am I trying to accomplish? What is my mission? What's important about how I do it to me, which would show up as our values that we're going to carry through into that organization. You could obviously ask those questions directly, but in your coaching experience, have you found any questions that are really helpful for you to ask or for people to ask themselves that help them fill in the fuzzy edges of that if the direct answer isn't coming to them when they ask it? Like how can a person answer those questions indirectly through some other mechanism you found?
Yeah, I would say one of the things that we're really careful about is when someone comes to us and they want to launch a coaching business and make $20,000, $30,000 a month online with an 80-90% profit margin, do it from anywhere in the world. The first question I always ask people is, what type of coaching do you do or want to do? And why do you want to be a coach, or why do you want to specifically focus on that? And for me, I don't like to set goals based on money. I want to do it based on vision or outcome or service. And I really try to only work with people that kind of have that same mentality, because you have people that might work in network marketing or MLM or real estate, and they're just kind of looking, or they're online traders, stock traders, and they're looking for like a quick fix or quick hit. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but I don't typically support those folks as much. As we're happy to help someone who wants to start a coaching business from scratch, but we really do work a lot with existing coaches that it's their mission, it's their purpose, they're meant to do it. They just are amazing coaches who have no idea how to run funnels and leads and get clients or do LinkedIn outreach or whatever we're helping them with specifically. So I do always ask that when I'm meeting with a new prospect, potential client of, hey, what's your vision? What's your deeper why? Why are you really trying to go after this?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So, I mean, you've got a pretty fascinating background, not just in the finance side, but also from a collegiate standpoint, right? You have this dual degree, MBA and law degree. If you think back, how does the thinking and the way you were trained to think in both of those paths impact or influence like how you think about running your business today? Like how much of that carries over, if any?
Yeah, I mean, I always joke around that law school teaches you how to think, and business school teaches you how to party and have fun. And I say that very jokingly because I had a great time at Cornell's Business School Johnson, and the network that I built, and the vacations and trips. I mean, I went to India, I traveled all over the world, and they really teach you how to network and form relationships, and that was really powerful for me. But law school really teaches you how to think like a lawyer, obviously, and think about problems very systematically. So there's kind of the tactical side of how to think like a lawyer and analyze problems. And obviously that translates very much into the type of advisory work that I do, whether I'm coach or consultant in that place. But then also just sort of the flexibility to spearhead a lot of legal initiatives within both of my businesses. Having that law background helps a lot. So for example, when we set up my hedge fund, originally we used a smaller law firm based in New York City that was very helpful. But at the same time, in order to move things faster and minimize bills and all that sort of thing, I obviously have a corporate law background. I worked at a law firm for my 2L summer in New York City doing corporate law. So I think when I was thinking about going to law school, because people all the time when I was at Cornell are reaching out to me on LinkedIn and Facebook and, hey, can I get a coffee chat, pick your brain? I'm not sure if I want to go to law school or not. I always tell the story about how my grandpa was a lawyer and very successful with all that, loved it. And everyone tried in my family to convince my dad to be a lawyer, even though he didn't want to. And then everyone tried to convince my mom to not be a lawyer because she was pregnant with me, even though she really wanted to. And so my dad has had this really cool career as a legal analyst, and he goes on TV and he kind of breaks down legal scenarios. He likes media more than law, I think. And so it's funny, like, when someone comes to me and say, "Oh, I want to go to law school," I try to talk them out of it. But if they're adamant that no matter what I say, they're like, "No, I'm going." It's like, okay, there's your answer. Go. And so I went into law school 100% knowing I wasn't going to be a full-time practicing lawyer unless I really needed to before making a switch somewhere else. And there's so much value out of having a JD. My dad actually carried on a tradition because my dad went to Cornell Law School and so did my grandfather. So I was third generation Cornell Law. Wow. There's a picture of my grandpa in a suit because they also used to wear suits to class, not like now pajama pants and everything. Right. And my grandpa wrote my dad a letter when he graduated law school. My dad did the same to me. And in it, he said, "What do Adam Silver, this person," he rattled off like the commissioner of the NBA, all these other well-known, successful people. What do they have in common? He says they all went to law school, but they didn't practice. And I want you to do whatever you want with your life, but I see you much more in a career of entrepreneurship and business and just leverage the law degree for that.
That's a really cool, that's a cool tradition in general, not just the going to the same school, but the, writing that letter and like, what an empowering thing to tell your kid after they've accomplished this thing is that they're not pigeonholed or stuck in the path that they've selected at that point. So if you can go back to getting that letter, like, did that resonate in the moment? Was that did that land in the weight of it then differently than it does now that you're further down the road as an entrepreneur? Or did it carry the appropriate amount of weight then?
Yeah, I mean, that letter specifically meant to me a lot because I was so driven growing up, in part because even though it may sound like I come from kind of this wealthy family, my dad was a government lawyer and my mom was in school. And so the combined household income was probably not even six figures for a long time. And so I was like, we were on tight budgets. I really didn't feel like I had what I needed. And then my brother came along and we were, I would say, lower middle class best. And so I'm not saying that to say that's such a bad thing because there's many, many people in this country in poverty, but we didn't have a lot of money going on in the family. And despite all that, nobody ever pressured me to go into a certain industry that would be like wealthy or more lucrative. I think in part it was because there was pressure put on my dad to be a lawyer. So he made a rule growing up. He's like, I'm going to be a dad who empowers my children to be whatever they want. It doesn't matter. And so the freedom and flexibility that they gave me to go to any college I want, to not go to college, if that made more sense to me, all this stuff, like my brother didn't go to college, was really powerful. And then even just remembering anecdotally being at Cornell and it was like finals time and my dad called me and he goes, "Hey, Brendan, I just want to make sure you're not studying tonight because the Knicks are playing and it's a huge game, it's playoffs, and I want to make sure you're watching that game and you stay up late and watch the whole thing." And so I really appreciate both the fact that he supported me through law school and we talked through a lot of stuff as I was studying case law, but at the same time, just no pressure. Just be whoever you're meant to be. And my brother's the complete opposite of me. He's much more like artistic and more like life versus career focused. And they've given us both the blessings to do that.
That's incredible. I mean, I have two girls. They're 8 and 5 now. And one of the questions I regularly ask myself is like, who do I want to be as a parent? Like, who am I really trying to be for this human that I'm responsible for? And that drives a tremendous amount of the way I think I structure my business and my time. And as they get older, like I can already see it. My 8-year-old is really into gymnastics. And she just like literally yesterday got leveled up to the one that's like the pre-team level of gymnastics. She's, watching all these girls. She knows who Simone Biles is, and she's watching all these girls for these great gymnasts that she's at this guy school with. And she's like, I want to go do that. I mean, since she watched Simone Biles on the Olympics this summer, she's like, I want to go to the Olympics. She's been saying that like consistently the whole time. And then as a parent, I'm sitting here going, if I'm honest, I don't really want to sit in that many gymnastics meets. I don't, when she makes team, which I'm sure she'll do in the near future, that means like 2 to 3 hours of practice every day, or at least 4 days a week for like a 10 or 11-year-old. I don't know that I want that for my kid. And at the same time, you want to empower them to do the things that they really want to do, right? To really let them go and run down that road and support them through it. So there's always this complicated tension of like doing what your parent sounds like they did a very good job of. Now, not to psychoanalyze them, but like, where do you think that comes from? Why were they so good at that?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I think for my dad, a lot of it came from the pressure from his parents to step into a role that may not have been best for him. My dad played a lot of competitive tennis growing up. He played college tennis as well, and wanted to pursue a professional career with that, potentially. He was also, again, very interested in media. I think he would have been a really good actor, like a TV or character actor. And so unfortunately, fortunately for him, it all did work out because he's now friends with John McEnroe and plays high-level tennis with all these cool guys. And so he's like through different charities and organizations, he is able to really realize some pretty cool dreams with tennis.
Media is just a secret way to get access to some of the great tennis players over time. Like that's why.
Exactly. Yeah. But then also, obviously stepping into media, and he now goes on national TV multiple times a day, and he's a paid contributor at a well-known TV channel and all that. So it's cool how it all kind of worked out for him anyway. But I think because earlier in his career, when he was a government lawyer and then a private practice lawyer, I think there was a lot of pressure for him to do that from his own father. And so I think he said, again, I'm going to let Brendan do whatever he wants. I think there's obviously some level of trust when they saw how driven I was. That was the reason why I kind of brought up our sort of like lower middle class, like not a lot of money swirling around incomes, because that in part drove me to want to be very successful financially as part of it. But I think because of the pressure that was put on him to be a lawyer and go to certain school and do certain stuff, I think he said, Brendan, if you want to go be high end, go be a high performer, go for it. But I don't like, it doesn't matter. Like, do what's best for you. And then I think with my mom, she had that like hardworking, high performer drive gene that my grandpa also had. And so she saw that in me. And so I think because she just knew I was never going to be an issue. Like, apparently I was an easy child. They always joke that my brother was like, a little bit harder as a baby. And like, I was just like easy, self-sufficient guy. And so I think because of that, she just knew and could be a little bit more hands-off. I don't need to helicopter him. I don't need to tell him he's got to apply to these schools. Like, I was applying to Ivy Leagues. I was doing all stuff early on because I wanted to and I was passionate about it. And I think they saw that and said, oh, we'll just give him the freedom to do what he's going to do anyway, and it'll all work out.
It sounds like you did your part to earn that degree of trust along the way. But man, I still think about it as a dad, and like, man, those moments are coming. That's going to be really hard to do. That's going to be interesting. That'll be fun.
Oh yeah, 100%. I mean, I just told you before we started recording that my wife and I found out yesterday that we're having a boy as our first child. Yeah, thank you. And it's like, Allie has called me out for saying, "Oh, he's going to be 5-0 pickleball player. I'm going to teach him 10 languages." She's like, "You're going to love him and support him in the things he wants to do." I'm like, "Yeah, good call."
But it's weird to balance the tension between those two because it's super true. Like, there's so many things I want for my kids, and I see the passion and interest that they have in them. And there is that tension that's going to be there, and it's a fun adventure to try to figure out how to navigate it.
Yeah.
So go back. I tend to think that at the core of most entrepreneurial adventures is this one question. And I think it usually begins with, I wonder, ... Like, I wonder if I can live that lifestyle, right? You mentioned, I wonder if I can travel more and not be stuck in the corporate law or corporate finance world that I see so many people stuck in, where they work a tremendous amount and burn themselves out, et cetera. I wonder if I can make that amount of money, So there's some people who ask the I wonder outcomes question of I wonder if I can own that house in LA with pickleball courts or something. So Brennan comes over. I wonder those things. Or I think people ask I wonder if I can solve that problem better. Or I wonder if I can get paid to do that. Like, I tend to think those are the three directions the I wonder question comes from. But I think you work with more entrepreneurs than even I do. Like, does that track? Do you feel like that's the question that's burning in most of their minds too? Or is there something else?
Yeah, I would say thinking about when I was wondering about if I could create this lifestyle, I really anchored on to a couple things. One was seeing people who were actively already doing it. And so I said, okay, if other people are doing it, at least it's possible. It's like when Roger Bannister he broke the 4-minute mile. So nobody could run a sub 4-minute mile for like 100 years. And then this guy ran like 3:59. And then within a month, like 2 more people did it. Yeah, but because mentally, it's psychologically, okay, it's possible. Scientists were saying a human does not have the capacity to do that genetically, et cetera. But he proved them wrong. And then all these other people started to follow suit. And so for me to say, okay, there's all these people who are doing it, number one. Then I started to dig a little bit deeper, and I was like, you know what? Some of these people, like, they may not be Tony Robbins worth almost $1 billion, but you have people making a few $1,000,000 a year. And honestly, some of them weren't even that impressive to me. I'm like, I will outwork them. I think I'm smarter than them, et cetera. Okay, I can do this too. And so that was part of it. And then I think what I did learn from Tony and some other people along the way is just mindset of like, no, it's possible. And I'm going to anchor into, I'll do whatever it takes until I actually make it happen, but I know it's possible. So that's part of it. But then what happened is early on, I started to overshare my dreams and my business plans to people that aren't safe or aren't encouraging. And that was hard because people would ask me what I do, and I said, well, here's what I'm trying to do, or here's what I'm starting up. I should have been much more cards close to the sleeve, invest, not really opened up as much with complete strangers, because when I was saying, oh, I want to do this, or I'm trying to start a blog, or I'm trying to be a full-time coach, people would just hammer me that it's not possible because those people they just don't believe it's possible. Yeah. And so then I'm starting to feel discouraged and frustrated. Now, obviously, I stayed anchored on no, it is possible, and I executed on it. When people say, oh, no, like, you just can't do that, it's just too hard out there. Yeah. I'm like, do you want to see the deed to my house? Do you want to see my P&L on Stripe? Like, what do you need to see for me to prove you wrong? Because like you're saying it's not possible, but I'm actually doing it. Yeah. And I don't mean that to take someone down, but that's just the mindset that some of those people are in. So I think for me, the wonder was, can I find people who are doing it already? Can I believe that I will do what I need to do it too? And then now that I'm on the other side of it, it's like people are like, no, you can't hire a good sales. You can't build a sales team. Like you just can't. I'm like, well, I run a sales team. I meet with them every day. So I can, maybe you can. I don't know. It's like, it's possible. Someone can do it.
So that brings up a good point. Like a lot of times what you're coaching people around, and this is true for every business owner or coach, not just you, but you're coaching people around this perception gap or this fear that something isn't possible. What's a good question you've learned to ask that helps somebody identify when they're stuck, not because they lack the talent or skill or capability, but they're truly just stuck from a fear or a perception gap? How do you help them through that?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and I probably should think about what are some good questions I can ask. I normally just try to break down and show them specifically what attributes and qualities they have that are going to make them very successful at doing this. Because, for example, let's say I'm leading a group coaching call, and I'm telling someone, this is what you got to say in the sales call, or here's how to go networking and get more leads. And they'll say something to me like, oh, Brendan, I'm not like you. I don't know I'm not that sales guy that you are, as if I was born with that. Right. Yeah. Right. Or, oh, I can't I'm like, do you want to have like social anxiety I had as a kid? I used to hate talking to people. I don't know what to say. I always feel awkward. I've studied it. Even when I was talking about going to business school, I learned the process of informational interviews and asking questions, and read How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie, and learned these things. So I think when a lot of our clients in the beginning may think and do think that they can't do it, or they believe that it's possible, maybe 1%, but they see me, oh, this guy making 100K or multiple 100,000 per month. That's so crazy and so different. I'm really trying to remind people that I'm not special. I just followed a process. I got a lot of coaching myself. I leaned in, I've done the work, and you can do it too. I even have a client right now, and she's amazing. And she runs her own Meta ads, she runs her own Reddit ads, she closes, she's built a team out, and she's going to skyrocket. And it's just like helping her see how great she's doing and reaffirming the truth in that. Because I think sometimes, for me at least, fear or anxiety or worst case scenarios can swirl in my head. So it's like you need someone to just help you see the reality. It's like when you look in a mirror and you don't see the true version of yourself because of the fogginess or the trauma from your past. It's like seeing your own possibility and capability. That's where sometimes having peers or even a coach can help you. Like there's certain things that you can do that you may not even realize. And when people speak life into you on that, it can be very powerful.
Absolutely. I mean, I think back to, as you were saying, I probably need to come up with some questions to ask there. I was like, wait, what's my question to ask? Like, how do I address this? And I think back to like Keith Rosen was my first coach. And he would often ask me the question, well, what would happen if that wasn't true? What would happen if nobody had ever told you couldn't do that? And that was one way that I found he was good at engaging with me and helping me recognize like the origin story I've told myself of why this isn't possible or why I perceive this not to be possible absolutely isn't rooted in some observable fact. It's rooted in somebody having told me or given me the impression that that's not true. Like I think one for me was I initially wrote out my first personal vision board of like, what does my ideal life look like? Kind of my own personal GPS for where I'm going. And I wrote this number down. It's crazy to think about. Like, I want to make $1 million a year. And that was just one bullet point in this whole list. And that number from my background was like terrifying prospect. Like, no way. And then I started realizing, like, I think I Googled at one point how many people make over $1 million a year in the United States. And it was like an absurd number. And I was like, oh,
massive. Yeah.
Hold on. A ton of people make that amount of money. And then I started thinking like, well, how much actually is $1 million a year? Well, okay, it's like $80,000, a little more than $80,000 a month.
333 a month. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, okay, well, hold on. That's a solvable problem. Like, if you just throw this one number at it, your context coming from where I came from was like, nobody makes $1 million a year in my arena or my sphere of influence or my parents' sphere of influence. And like, of course it feels terrifying, but like, what if that wasn't true? You start looking at it through those layers, like, oh, okay, that's a solvable problem. And it's not true that people can't do that. Fear tends to be a huge limiter there. It's interesting.
No, I totally agree. I think one person who I haven't talked about today yet is my stepfather. And so when I was 14, my mom remarried my stepfather, and he was the head of a law firm on Long Island where I grew up. And he ran a practice that was very successful. He was pretty well known. He was the lawyer for Howard Stern and Joey Buttafuoco and a lot of these celebrity cases, Lindsay Lohan's dad and all these people. And he's very confident. He was very hardworking. He was very assertive, and he had a lot of great skills. He was a very good lawyer too, obviously. And so he was interesting because he definitely showed me what's possible. He drove a Bentley was his car. He also at one point had a Rolls Royce and all these things. And so he was very inspirational in certain arenas of that. And then I think what he taught me the most was to not be so tight gripped around money, because typically people who don't make a lot of money also don't spend a lot of money in areas that they should, like either maybe giving donations like a tithe or benefactor of like 10% of what you already have, or investing like in a coaching program or in a therapist or something that's actually good for you. A lot of people that don't make a lot of money in our country blow it and take out credit cards. But I'm saying he wasn't afraid to like invest in a very expensive, like an attorney might say, hey, I want a $700,000 base salary guaranteed. But he knew that guy would bring in millions of dollars of business. He'd go, let's go. Here's a $140K 2-month advance on the table on check. And so he taught me to not be afraid to do things like that. And I think that helped me invest in coaching, because obviously coaching can be very expensive. I mean, I've worked with coaches who charge way more than me, and I've paid probably multiple hundreds of thousands of dollars if you aggregate all the coaching and therapy I've invested in over the years. And so he also modeled, 7-figure success and not being afraid and letting go of the tight grip we have on our own wallets, which also can let money flow back into us more abundantly. And so that was another thing that was helpful for me early on. Yeah,
seeing that abundance mentality at a young age would be really inspiring. I feel the same way now, but I certainly didn't have that exposure at a young age. And when you first see that type of mentality of not even just the ROI, like to your point about the lawyer offer, this is obviously going to produce an ROI. That's one thing. That's the type of calculus just about anybody can do if they're in a position to cut that check. But really not being able to see the ROI cleanly, which is a lot of times what coaching feels like.
Coaching, yeah, exactly.
No one's going to come out of this yet. I hope it helps me solve this problem, but I don't know how I quantified. I remember when I went to my old boss at Victaulic, and I told him that I wanted Keith to be my coach. And I was trying to tell him through it. I was sitting in my car, parked in Portland. I was outside my house because I didn't want to pull into my driveway yet and deal with anything else. I needed to close this particular conversation. And I'm talking about 45 minutes about what I'm hoping I get out of coaching and all these things. And he's super skeptical that this is even going to happen. And he's like, well, that's what I do for you. And multiple times I'd be like, but you don't ask me these questions. You don't do those things, which is a really hard thing to tell your boss. And then he comes down to it and he goes, oh, what was it going to cost? And I think I want to say it was like $900 a month or something, which is like, again, going back to what people charge for coaching, extremely little compared to what a lot of
low end.
Less than what I charge now and what you charge now. And so I was like, oh, it's $900 a month. I was terrified to say that number because that felt like an enormous amount of money. Mind you, I was 32 or 31 or something along those lines, and was just finally making six figures in my life. And I had no idea how much companies actually invest in their people, and that asking for $1,000 investment per month for one of your regional managers is like, in corporate scheme, not that big of a deal. I had no idea for that.
Right. Yeah.
His response was, well, then based on this conversation, Erik, you owe me $650. And I go, but you haven't done anything to help me on this conversation yet. And he paused. And I was like terrified if I screwed up and said the wrong thing there,
Yeah.
He paused and he was like, all right, let's give it a shot. Let's do it. But I didn't have that abundance mentality. I'll never forget the first time I tried to ask for an investment in coaching and how hard it was to do that.
Yeah.
Versus now, as a founder and as a coach, I'm like, if I feel like there's a chance that you can help me solve the biggest question and the biggest problems that I'm facing, and even the ones I don't know about, that I've learned to embrace that is the necessary investment. So you work with a lot of coaches who might have gotten past that first initial phase.
I was just going to say, it is a bit of a blessing in the sense that a lot of our clients are obviously already coaches. And so they know the value of, you meet someone off the street who's like a VP at a company and you're like, yeah, give me 10 grand and I'm going to give you conversations once a week. And they're like, no, I'd rather buy a Rolex. And you're like, okay, that's fair. But it's I get it. But people don't understand the intangible value and the life transformational work that it is. So yeah, I totally agree.
So what have you found to be the most important question you ask to help people orient themselves in the direction of seeing value from some unknown thing like coaching?
Yeah. It's a good question. Typically, the biggest thing that I'm trying to figure out is either what's the person's biggest challenge or where do they ultimately want to be? What's the biggest goal? And if we can sort of diagnose what they need to do to get there and create a roadmap and a game plan that will truly get them there with a partnership of us bringing to the table the coaching and consulting necessary, and I make sure that they're willing to do their end of the bargain as well, then they understand that it's not just a conversation once a week. It's so much more than that. It's content. It's an experience. It's accountability. It's a container. It's us quarterbacking the process with you and for you. It's just ultimately you're sort of reframing it from a weekly conversation or information, right? Because they call this the information product industry. Sure. That doesn't really capture coaching to me. I feel like books on tape is information industry. Yeah, this is more experiential, and we're going to partner together and climb them out, and then your life's going to be totally different, or your business is going to be totally different. And if you can get the person to understand that and see that path and really believe with certainty that they're going to do that with us, and we believe that's possible to do that with them too, then I think they see it pretty clearly.
So that's a great question. I remember our first sales call when you used to have a booking guy on LinkedIn whose also name was Brendan.
Brendan Mahoney, yeah.
He booked me to a call, and then I got on the phone and it was him, and then it was you. Anyway, I ended up on the phone with you, and I remember you asking me that question: where are you trying to go? What stands in your way to get there? And you kind of worked me through an outline of a process that we would take to really make that happen, and offered to coach me through it. And so when you ask that question, I'm curious if this is one of the reasons you work with coaches more, is because if I think about asking that question to a lot of the folks I work with on the corporate side, because I do a lot of corporate coaching instead of, I don't do work with a lot of coaches. That question, where are you trying to go? What's your biggest challenge? Presupposes that person can actually articulate it and has spent a significant enough amount of time, not just thinking about what's hard in front of them, but what their biggest challenge is. What's the 10x block that's really in your way that if it was gone would unlock that next level of success? How often do you find that people haven't engaged with that? Or maybe you've kind of selection biased your way into a cohort of people who regularly do that because they're coaches, but does that block make any sense, or that presupposition? Do you find yourself bumping into that often?
Yeah, I would say it's either coaches on average have some more time thinking about where they want to go, or generally might be more consciously evolved in the sense that they've done more work on themselves. They've seen therapists, coaches themselves. They've reflected on their lives. A lot of people become coaches out of a very painful life transforming event. So again, get divorced, you become a divorce coach. You lose someone, you become a grief coach. Like these are things that can all spur and create that desire or that change to become a coach to begin with. And with that can come more self-awareness and all that. I also think that there are certain industries and professions where people might be more tied down by either golden handcuffs or social pressures to not make a change in their life. Yeah. And so they stay where they're at, or they might not be coachable because they see that as a sign of weakness. And so, for example, obviously with my background, when I first got into coaching, I was setting up a lot of meetings with friends of mine who are investment bankers, worked in private equity, worked as corporate lawyers. And these people were completely scared to even have these conversations out of a fear that they would give up certainty, they'd give up steady income. And it's like, I remember specifically meeting with this one guy who was really smart, really hardworking, a really highly ethical and integrous person. And we had this great conversation about, what do you want your life to actually look like? He was a partner at a law firm. He had 2 kids, a lot of chaos, like probably working way too much. And he was very, very, very intrigued. And then, but he canceled the follow-up call, I remember. And I could tell it was because there was so much fear that if he works with me, we might actually align him to his true purpose. And that would be not being a corporate lawyer. And like, that's just, he couldn't do that. Yeah, exactly. Like the identity and all those things. I remember when I left working at a hedge fund, it was like, everyone thought I made way more money than I did because I was at that hedge fund. But reality was it was a startup and my base was $100K at the time. And then a few years into coaching and I'm making like $30,000, $40,000 a month. And I was like, oh, that's cute. You have a little hobby Etsy business. And I'm like, I make 3x more than you and your spouse combined. Like,
I work way less. I like my life.
Yeah, and I work from home and all stuff. Not that I'm fair, but it's just like being underestimated, which I would prefer. But I think that, coaches on average are like that. I think people who are more into personal development, that's why even generally small business owners, consultants, people who are more spiritually aware in any capacity typically are more open to it. But I do think that, I don't know if this is anecdotal again or not, but from my experience in church communities and Tony Robbins communities and all that, you just see higher levels of people with their own businesses and pursuing their passion more. Yeah. So I do think that I've always gravitated, because I'm passionate about cultivating my own path outside of what's expected and having more freedom of lifestyle and all that. And I think I attract more folks like that. So even putting me on a lot of calls with VPs and directors of companies, and they like want raises or they want things like that, that doesn't maybe excite me as much, even though that could be super cool and their true mission. I am bigger on disruption and change and all that.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, I can resonate with the fear of hearing something that creates disalignment and awareness of you're on the wrong track. I have a live one right now. You'll get a kick out of this, Brendan. I've got some friends who run a company called Peak Fulfillment Coaching. And what they offer is a 3-day solo retreat, a guided 3-day solo retreat. It's a box they ship you to guide you through literally 3 full days where you lock yourself away at an Airbnb or a hotel or something to go through this very deep dive to find what really does fulfill me and what's holding me back. And like, it's an incredibly deep experience. Several of my friends have gone through it. My wife's going to go through it here in 2 weeks. And I am terrified to go and do that because even as self-aware as I may or may not be, and I'm in such a stage with my business where I'm like, I really don't think I can afford to disrupt more than I've already disrupted. Like I have so many irons in this fire that I'm committed to, that finding out that I'm doing the wrong thing would just be like, shit, I can't afford that in my life right now. And I know from what I do and from good coaches I've worked with, like you and Keith and others, like, bro, it's going to be better when you just rip the Band-Aid off and just go and do that thing. And at the same time, I totally am feeling that fear right now. And so exactly. And I was like, please don't tell me, just let me have my head in my sand and make 6 figures and be unhappy. Totally.
Yeah, but I mean, even that is really good awareness that you're even, because that's the first step towards actually being willing to then do the retreat and all that. But yeah, I mean, I get it. There's so many things that we have in life, and it helps us empathize with those folks who may feel really stuck and unwilling to look at the change. It's like, I think it's the minute you start to get comfortable again is the time it is to put the microscope on everything.
Yeah, that's a great way to think about it. So you help coaches that are already, they already have a business. They already have an identity, maybe even a brand. They have an offer. They have a product. They probably got paying clients, and what they're really trying to do is get better at the front end of their business and standardize their ability to attract new clients, to engineer some system that will actually allow them to predictably grow their revenue stream is really what you're trying to do. So along the way, one of the things every coach bumps into is like, crap, it can't just be me. Like there's the people that I need, right? And you're very good at helping them see how to use setters and closers, and you're really good at helping people see the silos there. But there's a fear that goes on in that transition as well, from a coach who's largely solopreneur to just bolting on the first edition of talent, not just executor like maybe an offshore VA, but a true talent they're trying to bring on board. What are some of the battles you've helped people go through there? And what are some of the critical questions that help them advance their thinking so that they can embrace really scaling with other people beyond themselves?
Yeah. I will say that we do also help new coaches as well, because I am passionate about helping people make that transition. And we meet people who are coaches informally, like they just don't charge for it yet. They've always been the word of wisdom in their friends' lives, and we help them establish a new business. But we also definitely support, probably more so, people who are already in the process. They've picked up a couple clients. That allows us to go faster with them. So we do like that, because once you've gotten over the hurdle of like, okay, I am a coach, I can get clients, etc., we can go faster. But typically, before we even get into like building the team out or running ads and all that stuff, the most important thing is seeing structurally what's going on inside of that coach as a person, and then what's problematic with their business. So for example, problems with someone's business are offer price point, undercharging, over delivering, too much access to the coach and business owner, text message, email, in-person sessions, things like that. It could also be something going on with like the sales cycle. Like, you have a lot of people that come to us and they think, hey, Brendan, if you can just help me generate 5 leads a week, like we're all good. And then we'll help them get the leads. Like we can make a lot of referrals for you, set you up with a done for you system to generate leads. And then we look at the call reviews and it's like, the guy was ready to give you his credit card. You didn't take it.
You kept talking instead of closing.
Yeah, exactly. Or whatever the issue was. So I think the first step is what's going on inside the coach or solopreneur that we need to fix in them, typically like to get them to 15, 20K a month themselves. And then we can start to spend more money on ads. We can make your first hire, whether it's helping you. I mean, we have a bench built out of people, or we can help you recruit yourself of coaches, setters, closers. But it's funny because when I think back to my journey, obviously, Brendan Mahoney, awesome dude. He's not with us anymore. Awesome dude. Set you through LinkedIn. So we were running LinkedIn organic lead gen, set you, I closed you, and I think I actually coached you. I think we might have had a coach at the time.
On the second one, but I worked with you only. So
yeah, you were. It was because I think we just had like a bit of a special bond. We were very similar type of people, and you also wanted to do online course and Facebook ads, which is a little bit more sophisticated than what our typical CSMs were offering at the time. But yeah, I had to like figure it all out myself and grow a ton as a person and get good at closing and feel good about spending money on ads and all that. And then the foundation of the business came after that. Like we're honestly just starting to roll out full scale ads, Meta, IG, Facebook, Reddit, cold email again. But we've just been kind of like running 10K a month on Google plus LinkedIn organic, doing 100K a month. But it's like every level that you want to get to, you have to grow as a person. You have to grow as a business owner strategically as well before you can get to that next level. And so I think for me and a lot of our clients, it's like the impatience of like, I want to be a 50K a month immediately. Well, hold on a sec. You can't show up like this on sales calls and I'll just hire a closer. It's like, no, you can't. You have to be able to close, in my opinion, to hire a closer and then be able to manage them well and all those things. So it's like just meeting everyone where they're at specifically and figuring out what needs to change inside of them first and then layering it on after that.
Right on. So as we kind of start to wrap up, like you've made this evolution from your coaching business, launching the hedge fund, the podcast. You've obviously got a lot of entrepreneurial interest and opportunities in front of you, and some you're running at faster than others. But like, what do you do? What question do you ask yourself? How do you stay aligned with your mission as you bolt on these other opportunities you create?
Alignment is everything because, like I said, we really can't. You can set goals based on money, but I think it's to some degree a little selfish, or you're just not going to get there, or not enjoy the ride as much. And so, it's funny. I've had challenges running a coaching business. It's a tough business at times. It's lumpy. There's less recurring revenue to it. You're always needing to find new leads, and so via some of those challenges was in part what drove me wanting to start the hedge fund, and then getting all these investors on board has been great, and there's more recurring revenue and all that. But then I started to fall a little bit out of alignment with kind of why I'm here on this planet. And so I started, and this kind of just happened to me. It was a blessing rather than me having to be proactive. I started meeting with more potential hedge fund investors because in my mind, I said, once I hit assets under management of a certain amount, I'll just wind down coaching and go hedge fund full time because it's honestly more money and more upside and all stuff. And what I realized was, I called a guy that I used to play pickleball with a lot, and he makes a lot of money as a hedge fund call. And he started opening up to me about crazy stuff going on in his personal life. And I was like, oh, this guy needs coaching. So we actually signed him up for coaching. Then one of my friends runs an exotic car dealership in San Diego, and I hang out down there a lot. He's an investor in the fund. And I met this guy, and I thought he'd be great for the hedge fund. Obviously, he was trading in a Bentley to buy a different Mercedes that he liked more, and he was going to like lose 40 grand on the Bentley trade back, but he didn't care because he makes all this money. I'm like, yo, let's talk money, bro. And turns out he has an existing advisor who's actually doing really good. I'm like, I'm not going to try to steal that business. What else are you doing in your life? And then he tells me about crazy story with like lots of abuse and I think sexual abuse, all stuff. Long story short, hey, let's coaching opportunity. Let's help you build your mission out. So it's cool because there's obviously from a business standpoint cross pollination.
Yeah.
And a lot of some of our biggest hedge fund investors are actually clients on the coaching side first, which builds all that trust.
Sure.
And then it's like, hey, you've helped me make a lot of money, manage it for me, or I have a lot of money from my previous life and it's not being run well. You take it over. But I think there's kind of alignment on both sides because I think coaching is obviously something I love to do. But having a second income stream, and I do love the psychology of the stock market. Like, obviously, you probably know that this has been a very unstable year in the stock market, but we've been crushing it and outperformed the S&P 500 every month, net of all fees, performance and management fees. And since inception last year, we're outperforming the S&P 500 net of all fees, which is something like 10% of hedge funds do. Wow. So, yeah, and like, a lot of luck and all these things that have come together to make that happen, but it's very challenging and rewarding. And so, I think it's really important. Like the biggest thing for me was don't just lean in 100% of the hedge fund. I tried and it's not giving me the fulfillment that I need. I need to be coaching people. You can't really grow unless you're supporting other people too, in my experience. Yeah. And you grow the most from your best clients anyway. So to get paid to do that is really cool. And I don't think I'll ever stop that.
So what is your mission?
That's a great question. Just with my career or in life in general?
I don't know. I mean, you have alignment is everything you shared, and you've got all these things pulling at you, and you sounds like you just realized that, maybe not just now, but you have realized recently that continuing to turn outward and offer those gifts and values that you bring to the world to other people is fulfilling beyond the business aspect of it. Like, what mission is that really supporting for you?
I mean, I would say my overall mission in life is to help bring consciousness and support to people who have gone through the challenges that I've gone through and get to the other side. So we haven't really talked about this a lot today, but if you look at my past and, there was verbal, sexual, emotional, physical abuse in my upbringing, there's no reason I should be alive, not in active addiction, definitely shouldn't be able to have the relationship tools to be in a healthy marriage. And so I think ultimately the coaching business was started to help support people with everything. And I started as a life coach, emotional coach, relationship coach. Ultimately, I feel like my niche chose me and I could serve the most people through helping them with their businesses. And in that work, we do a lot of life coaching, a lot of underneath the hood life work too, which is super fulfilling. But ultimately, even, when I think about the hedge fund, I want to scale $1 billion hedge fund that allows for impact on my clients and their lives, both with their money, but also coaching them offline, helping them build internal family wealth and creation. And lastly, having a real vehicle with a massive budget of profits coming out of that business to grow my podcast, my reach, and my impact, to be able to share more of my story and my testimony of everything I've been through to help other people overcome the same challenges.
Yeah, right on. And that is an interesting combination. I don't know that I've ever heard anybody talk about the potential opportunity of you meet all these really wealthy people through your hedge fund. And one of the things everybody talks about when they meet wealthy people is they're just like everybody else. And they often find that the fulfillment they sought that got them to the money didn't actually solve the problems that they had hoped 100%. To solve. And you might be uniquely positioned to help them with both of those things in a very organic way. That's really cool.
I couldn't agree more. I think that ultimately our relationship with ourselves and our intimate relationship with a spouse or wanting that is kind of at the root of everything. Like Tony Robbins, 6 human needs, love and connection. So self, friends, and then intimate relationship, marriage, whatever you want to define it as. And a lot of these very wealthy people have a lot of success and money and all that, but then they either go home and they don't feel good about themselves internally. They're not married. They're not in a good place with all that. So that's a big passion for me, is like some of my hedge fund investors are amazing people and I get to kind of talk them through what I've worked out and help steer them in that direction. Obviously, it's informal until they want to engage in paid coaching. But just to sort of represent that, I mean, my clients are awesome people. My investors, I should say, are awesome people that I like to have a relationship and do life with. And that's, I think, a different mission than a typical hedge fund, which might only raise capital from big institutions and all that. Obviously, when I can do that, I will. I'm not going to turn that away. But I love that we're kind of more customized right now to high net worth individuals and people locally, and that I can be friends with all these people. I say once we hit a new level of AUM, I'll get boxes at the Super Bowl, we'll all hang out, or I'll get boxes we'll go on retreats together and grow as humans together. And to me, that's a much more exciting vision than, oh yeah, I'm just gonna raise $1 bazillion and make $1 bazillion, so I'll be good and taken care of financially and, fear driven or whatever.
Yeah, I wonder, it's making me wonder, is there a new entity that needs to be created, like a life fund, where it's like, yes, there's the assets under management angle that allows for this wealth to be increased once we have it, and there's a built-in service or component of it. The only reason you would participate in a life fund would be because I'm willing to spend more fees to actually have the life experiences that are fulfilling and enriching. And, those would be building camaraderie with people and striving in the same direction as other people and having fellowship with like-minded individuals. And that's a fascinating concept. Is there anything like that that's already out there where it's really that driven? I
mean, the closest thing that I can think of is there's obviously socially conscious funds that try to invest the capital they have into good missions and green business and things like that. And then obviously there are hedge funds that have a coach in-house to support the employees. So for example, have you seen the show Billions?
Yeah.
Yeah, Wendy Rhodes, right? So she goes in and she talks to everyone, but that's still kind of dysfunctional, and she has a weird relationship with Axe, the founder. So yeah, I don't know. I think, again, for me, I'm passionate about being an advisor and a coach, whether it's high-level business stuff or it's more internal life things. And so even some of our younger investors who haven't put in so much money, but until we hit our cap, because a hedge fund can only have 100 investors, until we hit our cap, I'm happy to take that in and say, hey, I'll financially educate you. I'll teach you how to invest. I'll show you why buying crypto is fine in small doses, or whatever the different thing we need to learn is. And we try to do that with our coaching clients as well. But yeah, it's definitely a unique model, I think, because most hedge funds are very sort of cold and secretive, and they're just here to help make pension funds and sovereign wealth funds that are typically not even based in America a lot of money.
I like that concept. I invest in my fund, and we use the profits from our fund to reinvest in your life. And obviously we have higher fees because of it, but that'd be a pretty cool and unique value proposition.
Yeah, we charge the same fees that a traditional hedge fund charges anyway. There's plenty of profit in that. And I think not to call a typical hedge fund greedy by any means. They've done hard work, and certainly if they're beating the stock market, they deserve to get paid. Yeah. But there's just so much abundance in that I would love to reinvest that into my community of investors and make it something, more interesting and unique. And that's not even a sell, because I think at the end of the day, numbers should speak for themselves. And if I can put up good numbers over a long period of time, which I think I can do, that should sell itself. But ultimately, I think making it more fun and differentiated, both for the client, but also for myself. I don't want to just be in an office and staring at CNBC and feeling stressed out all the time. I'm going to need to grow as a human too. Yeah. And so if I can create opportunities for my employees and for my investors, I think it's just, like you said, I think it's a unique model and it would be a lot of fun.
Well, that's exciting. Brennan, I can't wait to see where that goes. Congrats again on the marriage, the kid, the house. You got so many fun things you've earned in life through your approach to the way you support and serve other people. Thanks for taking a little bit of time with me here today.
My pleasure, Eric. Thanks again for having me on.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of The Brendan Burns Show. If it's your first time here, please make sure to subscribe on the Apple Podcasts app or in Spotify. Also, please leave us a rating or written review. This helps others learn about the show and spread the word to new and more people. Thanks again for listening, and have a great day.